Can you imagine if we get confused, we don't know which way to go, what to do, and so forth, and as a result of that, we become a little bit frozen in our spot, and we don't know which way, what to do, which way to go. Can you imagine the nefesh, the soul inside us, would get confused? He wouldn't know, should I give life, should I not give life, should I function or not function? It would be impossible. The neshama gives life all the time, under all circumstances. That means that the neshama is never confused. At all times it's clear what it stands for and what it wants to give. The confusion comes much further down the line. That's called Amadis Casio and Amadis Galia. In Amadis Casio, there is no confusion. All right, let's go. I want to start 4 lines from the bottom on page Vov, unless you have a different marker. What is your marker?
Yeah, it's third line.
Third line. Oh, it's okay. The 4th line from the bottom. The Hine. The Hine means we're going to explain what we presented just now, which is that there is union of bracha. And the principle of bracha is to draw down and bring out that which is concealed, min ha'olam v'yad ha'olam, that which is in olam, in Almadis Casio, to bring it down into Almadis Galia. This is the Nyahabrach. And that is affected as a result of the Aveda of Adam, of the human being. Ayidin's Aveda is able to affect this transition from Almadis Casio into Almadis Galia. And as we just now said, as a off the record, so to speak, that in Almadis Casio everything is clearly recognized. The truth is completely without any interference. There's godliness throughout everything. Almadis Galia, where there becomes multiplicity, there are many things, like Amadis Casio is like the life of the person, the Rotzen and the Oinag of the person. Amadis Gali is like Seichel and Midas. Once you come into Seichel, everything, every svara that's saying Seichel, you could say one way, you could say the opposite. Maybe not, maybe yes. And the same thing, of course, in Midas, and the same thing in action. You want to go someplace. Should I go there or should I go there? Should I go right? Should I go left? There's always confusion. There's an interesting halacha. The Gemara says that so when a person the Elam Yam, a person should always go right, turn right, which means, by Pashtas, practically speaking, it means if he's not sure which way to go, he should turn right. We come to a crossroads, you know which you go, turn right. Certainly, if you can go, if you can arrive at your destination, either way, you turn right. Both ways are available. There's always multiple ways available to go to someplace. And a person has to make a choice which way he wants to go. That's in Amudis Galio. Amudis Kasha, that confusion doesn't exist. Because in Amudis Casio, it's not world, it's godliness that you're dealing with. And in godliness, everything is perfectly clear.
Somehow related that in smaller B'Hayatika?
Less smaller B'Hayatika, right? So how does a person then affect that there should be Gilui of Amudi Iskasio in Amudi Isgalio? That in this world, in Seichel and Midas, we should have the clarity the way it is in Amudi Iskasio. And that takes place like this. Kasher ha'odom yispoil bihislavus. When a person becomes affected bihislavus, with great excitement, mihahizbonanus bivchina soivev umemale, from the hisbonus, as a result of reflecting of the union of soivev and mamale, which we discussed last time. And briefly, soivev and mamale are two madreges, two levels of Elokus that are in fact present in the world. Soivev is that level that incorporates and encompasses everything equally. And Memale is that element to Asmat of Elokus that is very specific, exactly to each thing, exactly the way what is supposed to be.
Sevim just have everything?
Sevim encompasses everything. To give us an inkling of Soivev and Mamali. For example, you build a house. The house demarcates. What demarcates means blocks off a certain amount of space, right? 100 feet by 50 feet. Demarcates certain area of space, and around that you build a wall and a roof, and that becomes a house. And in this house you can do all kinds of different things. You can put tables and chairs and food, and so that's, so to speak, you start living a practical life. Now, the space that the house demarcates, did this space exist before the house was built? What do you think? Isn't it? This space, after the house is built, is it any different than it was before the house was built?
No.
So in other words, the table and the chairs and everything else, in which space is it now? In the original space that was there before the house was built? Or in some new space that the house is demarcating? I know this answer, this you're not going to come up with an answer so simply. The answer is that's in both. Clearly, it's in the house. The fact that it's in the house is only for practical purposes. You're not going to sit down to eat in the middle of the street, even if you have a comfortable chair. Right? In order to sit down or learn, for that matter, you need a demarcated area that will give you peace and quiet, and you'll be able to, and no interference with anything. But that's only for the specific practical purposes. But where does it really exist? What space really provides, so to speak, space for it? That's the overall space. That's the real thing. That's the, so to speak, the savior. That encompasses everything. Before you ever dreamt of building a house, that space was able to provide for a house, for a tower, for anything you wanted. That's the real presence. So in that saving, there is no conflict. You can put there anything you want. And you're not offending it in any which way. In the house, hey, in the house you can bring a table. You can bring a car into the house. You can bring a horse into the house. You know what I'm saying? It has to fit the particular circumstance, situation. So inside the house, there is what we call a helem. You know, it seems to be a very limited presence. In the overall reality, it's unlimited. If we would recognize for a moment, as we are sitting here in this room, and we are doing our little thing, we will realize the overall reality of the space in which we are sitting. We have a totally different mindset. Right? Somebody comes up and pushes you and moves your seat over. Right now you get all upset. What are you doing? Get out of here. But if you contemplate that you're sitting in an infinite space, you say, okay. You can't displace me.
Right? Saying that saving is both?
I'm sorry?
So what is the saving? The saving is just the general space and the particular space? Or just the overall?
It's everything. It is the that encompasses and provides for everything. And then from that comes little trickles into Mamali.
Even those little trickles are considered saving.
You what?
Even those little trickles are considered saving?
Those little trickles are considered Mamali, but they're coming from Saving.
So you're saying, so is it saving or Mamali? Which one is it?
Mamali. But what gives Mamali its support Seder. I think last time we learned it, I pointed out this Indian that we are sitting in the room and we are supported by the floor, and the floor is supported by the beams, and the beams are supported by the wall, and the wall is supported by the foundation is supported by the earth, and the earth is supported by the Meibashter. So therefore, ultimately, everything is supported by the Meibashter. If the earth doesn't have its own means to support itself, doesn't have some means to support anything. So imagine if we had the insight and the depth of thought of recognizing that the reason that this cup is standing up here on this table, just standing like this, is not because the table is holding up the cup and the floor is holding up the table and so forth. It's because the Eibishter has made it that the cup should stand. We're a different world. Okay? But it's not fantasy. That's the truth. That's really the truth. But, we don't have that mindset and that depth of mind to think that way. But really, that's the truth. So, kasher ha'odem yispor b'savas mizboin b'chin seva kolam, seva v'malek, and the person is mizboin in the union from seva and b'malek. He sees a lakus in the seva, and he sees the malek. Oz then, hare ma shehoya behelem b'nafshoi. So then, that which was behelem b'nafshoi, concealed in his soul. As I mentioned, as I said also before in the moment before we started the class, that the nefesh itself knows and relates to the absolute godly truth all the time. It can never be confused. It can never be confused.
Like even if it's in the, even when it's in the body?
Even when it's in the body. The nefesh itself is not confused. It is in a transition to the body, and the way the body receives it, because in order to come to the body, it has to go through the brain, through the seichel and the midas, and that's when it becomes, when it becomes the obstructions. There are obstructions. Huh?
Although it goes through the obstructions, but it's still not changed. Right?
No, the nefesh itself doesn't change. Obstructions in its coming down into the goof.
So it's not like less of the neshama coming down?
I'm sorry?
It's not like less of the neshama is coming down into the body. It's the same exact neshama coming down.
It's exactly the same as shown. Except as it comes into the goof, it becomes problematical. It becomes a problem in how the goof is receiving it. For example, I'm talking about the group, talking about us. For example, we learn about Seva Kulam and Malak Kulam. We learn about godliness. We learn that everything is from the Meibashter. And then we learn, the Shulchan Aruch says that Eibashter wants that we should do such and such, or not do such and such. So what can be a problem? Everything comes from the Eibashter. The Eibashter wants that we should get up early in the morning and learn Krishma on time or whatever and go to shul. So what can be a problem? No problem whatsoever. The Eibashter wants it. The Neshama wants it. Who doesn't want it? The Guf. The Guf says, "What are you saying? I don't hear you."
Try again later.
So when he has his bonus behasevim kolamim and then sevim amali, then that which is behelem is in his nefesh, for sure behelem is nefesh, for sure contained in his nefesh, but behelem, yetze lidei gilui oir benafshi. That it comes forth, it comes out with a revealed light in his nefesh, meaning this is a very different. In other words, he begins to actually sense here in his body what the nefesh really wants. He feels the excitement of the nefesh in his body. Gili yoir. His boilus ha-nefesh, where he becomes in great affected in his nefesh, he is aroused to follow through in action, the kalois koicho. And this brings, kalois, kolo, it brings out all of its koyach, the whole koyach of the nefesh. Like this, normally, the koyach of the nefesh is not, as I said, there's obstruction. Yes, no, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. There's always kinds of measure. But when he becomes the hispoilus, from this hispoilus, then the whole koyach of the nefesh comes right out. It's an amazing thing, you know. It really is an amazing thing. You think that the person has a certain amount of physical strength. And it depends on his physical structure, on the body, how much physical strength he has. A little inspiration, all of a sudden, he becomes a giver. And what a giver means? Completely different. They don't recognize a person. Physically, his movements are much more agile, agility, you know, he can jump, he can run, he can dance. And then all of a sudden he can't make a step.
He what?
He can't make a step.
I mean, you can't make a step.
If he doesn't have the inspiration, everything is hard for him. Physically. Oh, I'm tired, oh, I'm this and that. My feet weigh 10 pounds, I can't lift them up. This is the principle of bringing the nefesh, life, into the guf. V'harei zeh nikro b'shem brocha b'nafshay. This is properly called by the term brocha in his nefesh. This is called brocha. Brocha, as we said, brocha ha'mavrich es ha'gefen. That brocha means bringing down from a higher level into the lower level. Why is it called brocha? Again, the Rebbe is going very specific. Ki, because but before it came out, legilui bilvovoi, to openly, to have felt in his heart, hoyo bechinas elokus benafshe behelem. This elokus aspect was in his nefesh behelem for sure. Bebechinas am diiskasya bilvad, but then it was only in bechinas am diiskasya. In this manner, bebechinas, in that manner, what's called am diiskasya. Am diiskasya means it's there and it's really felt by the nefesh, but it's not felt outside of the nefesh. The guf doesn't sense it, or even the brain doesn't sense it. Even the seichel doesn't sense it. Oh, I don't understand. I don't, you know. Even though it's mamish alakus b'nafshi. But it's b'bchinas am diiskasya. It's a whole world that it doesn't express itself. want to give you a little bit of a tangible touch of this Amud Iskasya. Every time you learn something that you never learned before, and you have questions, you don't understand. How can this be? How can this be? How can this be? And then you go further and get answers to your questions slowly, one by one. And then this idea begins to make sense. Like, for instance, we're saying that in the nefesh, Elokus is present all the time. And it's alive and well, so to speak. It's a whole world. Inside the nefesh, a whole world going on. We don't see it. But once we start discussing it and pointing it out, eventually when you come to fully understand it, usually what happens is, oh, that's what you mean. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. I mean, of course. Of course, you just didn't know it. Now you know it. Just no. I knew it all the time. I didn't know what I knew. But I really knew it all the time. We never really learned something new that we didn't know before. We didn't know that we knew it. Because otherwise, how can you learn? You don't have, if you don't have inherently the seichel in the nefesh, you cannot know it. You cannot learn it. We really knew it all the time. Except, as I said, we didn't. Knowing by in our world, know means Amudi Isgalia. That I know and I was able to put it in perspective, logically. That's called knowing. That which I know in Amudi Iskasya, inherently in my nefesh, is not called knowledge. It's not called knowledge on this level of Amudi Isgalia, but inherently I know it all the time. And this is why when I come to fully understand, it says, oh, that's obvious. Well, of course. What do you mean obvious, of course? You just didn't know it. 5 minutes ago you didn't know. How did it become obvious, of course? Because now, through this learning process and asking questions, you got in a little deeper into your own Amud Iskasya, and you say, yeah, of course, I knew it all the time.
You guys are drawing down Amud Iskasya to Amud Iskasya?
Ultimately, you draw from Amud Iskasya into Amud Iskasya. That's called Brocha. This is what we're learning now. Because in Amud Iskasya, in the Nefesh, there was a Lakus Benafshe Behelem all the time. But it was Bibchinas Amud Iskasya. It was an Amud Iskasya manner. What's an Amud Iskasya manner? It's there, but you're not aware that it's there. Ve'alidei ha'hizboinus. And then, through the process of the hizboinus, ve'hispoilus, ve'hislahavus. And then furthermore, not just the hizboinus, but hispoilus, being affected, being excited by what you are recognizing in your hizboinus. This hisboinus and hispoilus v'hislahavus. This is something which one gets to know if he doesn't knows what hisboinus and hispoilus and hisslahavus. But we can only explain what these words refer to. As it says over here, the lakus inside the nefesh behelem is there all the time. No question about it.
Wait, but I thought only when the nefesh comes down here, it didn't change, right? So, right, that's what you said before. But I don't understand. I'm saying, so So, like the same way that it understood it in like Alma Discasia, it should understand it the same way in like Alma Discalia, right? The whole thing. So why are you saying that through this branch of the spouse of this whole idea, so Slen al Kus, which is the whole now is Begili. I mean, like, shouldn't it have been Begili also in the Alma Discasia? I understand.
Alma Discasia is not Begili.
I mean, yeah, but like the Nefesh understands it. There.
Yeah.
So what does it mean that it's the Helm?
Okay, that's what I explained to you before in these words. Bibchinas Alma Discasia. What is the Bechina? It's there, Bibchinas Alma, in Alma Discasia manner. What's the manner of Alma Discasia?
Hidden, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, okay. That's what I explained to you. So listen carefully, okay? I'll go back to the moshel, very simple, tangible moshel. I'm very superficial. It's not really fully correct moshel, but it's enough to get us started. The house and the space upon which the house is built. This space upon which the house was built, was it capable of holding a house? Did it have a house? Was anybody aware that in this space can be a house?
Well, yeah, could be not. Could be something
When?
else.
When do we become aware of it?
When it's actually built.
When you misboinen. When you pay attention, you think, oh, what can we do with this? If you don't pay attention to it, nothing. It's a wilderness. Whoever thought of a house? Right? It's there. I mean, it's not there, but it's certainly capable of being there. But begilui, to know it, it doesn't happen unless you, for some reason, you start thinking, maybe we should do something over here. And if you don't think it, then it remains bebchinas alma. It's there, but be discussed.
Oh, it's just like a potentially that like.
It's not even potential. It's not even at the level of potential. It's true, but it's not even at the level of potential. Level of potential is like this. Let's say there's a wilderness. A wilderness. Let's say this America, right? This continent. Before Columbus, before the Europeans discovered this continent. This wasn't a potential. It was there. It wasn't even potential. Once people discovered, they found that there is this continent. And they started thinking, oh, maybe it would be a nice thing to expand, to go to this continent. Then, so they landed over there in Boston, whatever it is, let's say on the West Coast, by California or Florida, or West Coast of California and so forth. There, they didn't even think of going there. But potentially, it could, because now they have a ways to go there. You understand what I'm saying?
Not fully.
Huh?
No, not fully.
Once people landed on this continent,
Then
then it becomes a potential, even though they don't know even what it looks like further down. But how do they go? They just moved slowly westward.
I don't get it. If you're in the world, like to travel anywhere, it's a potential.
What?
If you're in the world, there is a potential to get anywhere, no?
Yeah, that's why I want you to understand these finer elements. That's what you said before. There's the wilderness, and there is no house there. There isn't, because a house has to do with a human being, with human knowledge.
There's only one? I didn't hear exactly.
A house has to do with human presence and human knowledge, human thought. And if you don't think about it, it's not there. The wilderness is not going to build a house. It's not going to come to you, hey, build a house over here. doesn't even have any potential. It's much higher, what's called, much more remote than even potential. So this is the pshat. In the nefesh, there is a lukus. And Baruch Hashem Bayas, that it is in potential because we have seichel. And any time we choose to be misboinen, we can reveal that in it.
So you're saying before I find something, the neshama is in the Om Discassia, it doesn't have seichel.
Right, it doesn't have seichel to reveal. You know what I'm saying? Seichel to reveal means to identify things in a revealed manner. Like I said, a house. A house is needed, is only serves only for a specific activity. A house doesn't change anything in the space.
Okay, wait a second. So I don't know. I'm still not getting it because the neshama. Wait a second. So can you give me an example of what the neshama is thinking about in the Ma'al? You can't, right?
Excuse me?
Is it possible to give a mashal for what the neshama is thinking about the Ma'al?
What the Neshama is thinking about, sure. Not a moshel, I can tell you what the Neshama is thinking about the Mevish Na'alakus. About the God.
So isn't Elikus revealed over there?
What?
So isn't Elikus revealed over there? If it's thinking about it, so that means it must be
The Neshama is not thinking about it in a manner not in a discovery manner. Now it's thinking about it, I don't have it, but let me find it. The Neshama doesn't need to find it. It is all the time completely imbued with Elikus, and it's constantly experiencing Elikus.
It's not thinking about it, it's living with it.
That's right. To give you a moshel for this, again, it's only a moshel because this is a physical world. It cannot be exact, but it's in the physical world, it is a forever moshel. Breathing. Are you aware that you're breathing?
Not always, no.
You're not aware of the breathing. None of us are aware of the breathing.
Right now?
Huh?
Right now we might be.
Not now where we might be because we are thinking with our cycle that we're breathing. But breathing itself is not by our activity. Because that is the life itself. That's higher than seichel. If we were to live consciously, breathing, it would be a very painful life, torturous. That wouldn't be qualified even as life. Life has to be automatic, from above. Like I explained to you. Remember that? I explained to you about the air mass? No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? We think that we are actively breathing. If we would have actively breathing, we would be in a hospital. This is not the way to breathe. Breathing is the air. We have a vacuum in our, an emptiness in our lungs because we breathe out, so the lungs are empty. And then there is the air mass, the air pressure from the atmosphere that pushes air into our nostrils automatically. We don't have to breathe in, we have to breathe out to empty out the carbon dioxide. But breathing in is automatic. That's called life. You're totally not aware of it. So this is like a moshel. You understand? It's a correct moshel, but within the context of a physical environment. So the neshama doesn't think about Holocaust.
It's living.
It lives Holocaust. It is Holocaust.
That's the pshat of what it means that no, wait. So there is a little bit of a change. Not really, but between the find some other neshama is like in the element discussion and in the element discussion. So now it has to think about all this.
Right, but it's not the neshama. It's in Amud Gali. It comes you mamshech the neshama, there it's a completely different way at your mamshech. You mamshech the neshama through seichel, through midas, not the etzem hanshama. You know, a certain aspect of it, his spoilus. This is what I was going to explain, the senior between his spoilus and his spoilus, his lahavus. His spoilus that brings about his spoilus and his lahavus is a very special aspect that we were able to do with our seichel. Excuse me. But this is not the normal process of seichel. Normal process of seichel is an orderly thinking, a question, an answer, a question, an answer, a question, an answer. So question and answer is still only on the seichel level. It's not really reaching up to the Almudis Casio. It's all in Almudis God. Let's use an analogy, an example. Let's use an example. You come into this room and you have to set up tables so that we can learn in a group like this. And you pick up a table, put it over here. Where should we put the next table? I'll put it over here. The next table, put it over there. Put the chairs on this. Okay. So this you've put up by trial and error. You know, this looks good. Let's put this one next to this. Let's put this one, and put it together in a certain way. And now it looks okay. Now you stand back, and you look at this room and says, "Hey, it looks like a good learning place." You know, it's really, so to speak, cozy. It's comfortable. You can sit around. You can see everybody. It's really this. When you reflect back on it, look around at what you have. This, you're not looking anymore on the which tables and how the tables are put together. You're looking at the service, what it gives you. You know, it provides for this wonderful get together and sitting together and so forth. This is his bonus. This reflecting is a much deeper perception than the perception of how you put your tables together. The tables are put together. This is Namodis Galio. How do you make things happen? This reflection is seeing how this form that you put together, how that fit into the room in general. This is kind of the connection between Almudis Galio and Almudis Casio. Like we explained before, Almudis Casio provides for Almudis Galio. You know, where are you going to put the tables? In the space. Where is the space? The space is in the general space. You with me? Do I have you with me so far? Yes? No?
Are you just saying the same thing as you said previously? As if yes, then I understood it. No.
No, I want you to understand it now, because if it's the same as previously, I wouldn't be saying it now.
It's a little different.
Okay. I'm trying to explain the principle of his boinonus. The principle of his boinonus is different than the process of seichel. Process of seichel essentially deals with Almudis Galio. Structure. Do you follow me?
Seichel? No. Again, what's the word that you used for like all discussing?
Hmm?
Okay, maybe if you say it the other way, I'll get what you said previously.
So you should not have any questions. When you know everything, you don't have any questions, then you can use
Alter. Right. His bonus is not to answer questions. Bonus is to reflect on the reality of things. This is where the hisbonenus moment is where our seichel connects to that which is higher than seichel. That which we know. What?
How do these members connect to Thomas discussion?
That would higher than seichel. How this fits into the general reality, general truth. Like we explained before, I'm going back again. We explained before that this house and this room was built in the space that was here before. Okay, everybody remembers that? And that space that was here before was not demarcated, was not formed in any which way. It was just open space. And in there was no house, there was no design of anything. Right? We went through this before, right? Then you built a house, and in this house you set up, I made a room and you set up tables. Why did you do all that? Because you wanted to sit and learn. And now, first, we begin to realize what possibility the original space contained in it. Do you follow what I'm saying? The fact that really what you were able to do in that space, see, these tables you put up because we have walls around it. But that possibility was there before, except you didn't relate to it. You didn't see it. And now you see it. So now, when you're misboinen in the in what this provides, what type of services provides, rather than the structure of the tables. The structure of the table, this is the seichel, this is Amadis Galia. This is how you make it. But what does it mean? What does it provide? That's something bigger. That comes from the original reality, from the elokus that's in the nefesh. Anybody with me? Shmuel? A little bit?
It
No?
just goes there.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm jumping a little bit too far. Anyway, his bonus, but the bonus is boinen in Soivev and Memale. Mizboina means that one in his seichel becomes aware in the union of Soivev, in the union of Memale. The Elokus itself, at the Soivev and Memale level, then he becomes mispoiled. It touches him. Because this elevates him to a higher level. And therefore he becomes mispoiled, and his lahavus becomes very excited about it. Because this elevates a person to a higher level than his normal level of function, of activity.
And that has to do with seichel?
What?
And the hispalas comes about through seichel?
The spoilers, no. The spoilers, that is higher than seichel.
Right, so where does the seichel come in? That was by the hispalas? I thought we said that's higher than seichel, no?
That's right. This is his bonus. His bonus is that level of seichel, where seichel relates to that which is higher than seichel. it is on a level of seichel, but it's not seichel where seichel is limited to itself, but it actually relates to that which is higher than seichel. For instance, again going back to our moshel, as we said before, we can understand the room, we can understand the tables in a certain form. That we can relate very well. We can even relate to the house. But the house in the wilderness, that's something we didn't relate to.
What's wilderness?
In the wilderness, in uncultivated land, we can relate it only when it becomes already a yishuv, we can relate to it. If someone who has a little bit deeper understanding and deeper experience, he comes to this area, which is totally wilderness, uncultivated, and he looks around this and he focuses in and says, here, could be such and such. He envisions the yeshiva, and he becomes very mispoiled. Wow, this is such a, this is like bringing the Mamali straight from the Savior. He becomes very mispoiled. This is like his point, his bonus. There's nothing, there's no house there, there is no room, there's no table, there's nothing. But still, with his seichel, he can project something which is more than higher than seichel. That's called his bonus. When we are misboinim in davening, we're saying, essentially the first part of davening is just simply relating how the Rebbe creates everything and how he provides for everything. Like we say, Noisin livheimo lachmo livneir vasher yikro. He provides for the behemoth its food and the raven for what it's calling for. Okay. Now, when you look at the behemoth grazing on the field, do you see the Eibishter feeding it? Do you see the Eibishter feeding it? You don't see it? Because you're thinking at a much lower level. But if you think of it on a higher level, a truer level, how did this all happen? What's happening over here? There's grass and there's a behemoth. This is all accidental. You understand? Just happens to be that a behemoth and there's a behemoth. Just means there's grass. And just happens to be that they meet up together and the behemoth eats the grass. So you realize there's something real happening. So even though in your seichel you don't really see it that way, you don't really understand it that way. In your seichel, because like you said, when you look at the behemoth grazing, you say there's grass and there's a behemoth, and the behemoth eats the grass because she likes the grass. That's it. But if you use boinin in the overall reality of things, how the Rebbe provides for every creature. Every creature has its place, its nest, its food, and everything. Then you see a different picture. You see not the food, and not the grass, and not the behemoth. You see the Meibush. You see the Soviet. You see the reality that the Meibush provides for everything. You see that encompasses everything and provides for everything. For the behemoth, he provided with grass, and the human beings provided with wheat, and with a mill that makes flour out of the wheat, because you can't eat wheat. You have to grind it down to flour. And, you understand? And everything else. So there you have your mizbein with your seichel, but it's not on the seichel level. It is where with your seichel you go and see what is really happening here from the Rebbe's perspective, what the Rebbe is providing. That's called relating, going back into the Seibim, into the truth of things. And then you become really mispar. You see something really happening here. Not just the nature that Behemah can eat grass. Big deal. You understand? Hello? This is called hisboinus. And when one is misboinin, then that brings his spoilers and his lahavus. In other words, this is where a human being, with his seichel can relate to Amadis Kasha. But he recognizes that there is a truth, a real truth going on, but it's beyond him, that's not a piseichel. So then, this is what the Rebbe is saying. Al deha his bonus, his spoilers, his lahavus. Hare. So then, ho'alakus, ho'yotchila behelem. This alakus that previously was behelem. It's nothing new. This knowledge that everything is really, the Rebbe provides for everything. The Rebbe is everywhere. And that was there before. But it was behelem. He wasn't aware of it. He didn't relate to it. Now the Elokus that was before Behelem, Meir Ato Begilu Benafshe. Now he really experiences. He shines his life, shines up his life. Oh, wow! This is the world I'm living. I'm living it. Brings a new life to his own life, so to speak. Let's say a person needs parnos. Needs parnos. You know what parnos is? A person needs to make a living, as we say in this country. Okay, how do you make a living? You get a job, you do your work. Hopefully you do a good work and the boss likes you and he pays you. Now that's the normal. Okay, go out into the street and say, give me a job. How does it happen? It doesn't happen like that, right? You know already.
Yeah.
You have to go ask around, what can I do? I cannot, and where can I find a job like this? And I have to have recommendation, one person to another person, and go through and so forth. So when one begins to think, like you're sitting here in the yeshiva, begin to think, I have to have parnasa. In order to have parnasa, I have to communicate with 100 different people, and they have to like me. It's overwhelming. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. How's it ever going to happen? Clearly, that's not the way we approach it. The way we approach it is, there is the reality of it. The Rebbe created the world. And they created all the people, including myself. Excuse me. Rebbe created everyone, including myself. And I'm here in the Rebbe's world. I'm going to find my parnosa not because I'm going to knock on doors, but because I'm in the Rebbe's world. And therefore, the parnosa is prepared for me by the Rebbe's. That is there already. That's definite. Just like air comes down into my nostrils, parnosa is coming down from the Rebbe's. Now, I have to find it. It should come to me in some logical way. But I don't have to create it. Just like when I breathe, I have to breathe out to allow the new air to come in. You know, there's in and out. But it comes because the Rebbe gives it. If I did not realize that, I didn't say, the parnosa is there because the Rebbe creates the world, it would be very, very depressing. Very scary. But that's not the way we live at all. You know, a lion wakes up in the morning, goes out from its hole, whatever it is, and the first thing it does is what?
Screaming.
Huh?
Screaming.
I mean,
Screaming.
Scream. It gives a roar. It gives a roar. And the lion gives a roar, you can use it. It's a roar. It's a real powerful roar. What is the roar about? He is screaming, I need my food. What is he screaming to? What is he screaming to? It's part of the Rebbe's creation that every creature feels that its food is there. Just has to find it.
Why is it the call out?
Huh?
So why is it call out?
It's an expression of, it's there, now, where is it? The same lahavdil, a human being, a yid, gets up in the morning and gives a roar. Ani goes davening. Okay, now I have to go and do the logical steps to find it. And when one is misboinen in this whole reality, how from Almudis Kasi, from our Soiviv, comes in Amalek, and eventually everybody meets up with his little parnosa, with his little job, with his little employer, with his little place, and has parnosa with Neighbor Shazil. A miracle. That's a good reason for his spoilers and his lavas.
Okay, so we got to.
The first time we finished.